6v6 actually fixes a lot of the problems that's being faced by the tank role in Overwatch 2. And I thought I'd talk about that today in this video. Hi everybody, my name is Abby. Welcome to the video. I really have been seeing a lot of discussion running around about how tank feels in 5v5 and 6v6. And before I jump into this video, I want everybody to know I've kept a very open mind to 5v5 because I genuinely really wanted to give a chance to the new balance team to prove that perhaps they can make this format work. I've never been opposed to the idea of staying with 5v5 or going back to 6v6, but the more we have gone on with the 5v5 format, the more I've begun to realize that perhaps staying in a 5v5 format is more harmful to Overwatch than it is going to be in the long run than going back to 6v6. Essentially, what I'm trying to say here is tank has become such a miserable role that without another tank, we're really seeing a lot of problems rise that they cannot figure out. First of all, because there's only one tank for, the newer supports and everything, they've tried to, put like these abilities that help make these newer supports feel a little bit like mini off tanks. Like the support power creep has been unreal to help them stay alive a little bit longer. Like, I mean, if you look at Keiko's kit with the survivability, she has the invulnerability frame. Life Weaver brings an invulnerability frame with the pull. Baptiste still has the immortality field, and who knows, with the new support that's coming out in a few seasons from now, Space Ranger, she might actually come with some form of immortality as well. And do we need these immortalities in Overwatch? No, of course not. Why? Because the worst part about that interaction is usually when these invulnerability frames happen, or whatever you want to call it. The thing is, the tank role suffers from this the most, because tank is all about taking space, denying space, as well as punishing characters that may be out of position, or you know um just securing a kill on the enemy tank that may have extended or pushed up a bit too much. Usually when these invulnerability frames pop up, it allows that other tank to actually quickly reset, because Overwatch is such a fast-paced game that 1 second is more than enough for them to get out of a sticky situation, reset, and then retake a team fight. And if you as a tank do not have that invulnerability frame or whatever, then you're going to be struggling. Now, usually the way the tank wars used to work, like, I'm talking about the tank fights over here in these Overwatch team fights. Usually, this was done very cleverly in between the trades of cooldowns between tanks. Now, in 6v6, the way this worked, let's take a simple example, was your Ryan and Zarya versus their Ryan and Zarya. Whose Zarya burned the bubbles first, which Ryan was getting in the more swings, who built the shatter first, and that was kind of how, the tank exchanges went then. So tanks really were controlling the front lines. Support was all about supporting, and, DPS was, well, all about damaging and opening up opportunities, which they've kind of maintained. DPS has, largely remained the same, and the support has remained the same. If anything, I would argue that supports were actually bigger winners of 5v5 because it allowed them to open up and play this newer playstyle where they can kind of do a little bit of everything. Where, like, support is just that strong in 5v5. Now, I'm not saying support needs to lose power or DPS needs to lose power, even though I would argue right now that DPS is the most cosmetic role in the game. I'm saying that we need to look at the state of tank. Without doubt, I'm a DPS player. I have my most hours on DPS. Then I have an equal amount of hours on tank and support. Although I will say that I have a lot of hours on Doomfist. Love that character. Right next to Genji is my favorite. But I think it's something we need to understand, that the tank role, its issues and its problems that are being faced in 5v5 cannot be solved. Now, do I think that potentially Blizzard could take us back to 6v6? Yes. What I think is that this next year they're going to be focusing on the DPS passive and balancing around it. Like they've said that every year they kind of want to, change it up to make the game feel more fresh. I do believe that perhaps at some point this year we may see a surprise, quick play hack where we might get 6v6, and they will, allow that quick play hack to stick around for a while and see how people feel about it, see how the queue times are, and everything like that. And speaking of queue times, I'm going to come back to this in the future, because this is usually the argument of for 6v6 that, well, no one was queuing tank, and I kind of want to talk about this a little bit later. So, I do believe that for the next 1 year, there's like, we're not going to see any form of 6v6 unless it's quick play hacked. Instead, they're going to continue trying to balance around the new DPS passive. They're going to continue trying to see if they can, fix the tank problem with the new support and tank that will come into the game. And, the deeper we go down this rabbit hole, the worse it's going to get from the POV that we're still going to, essentially, the tank role is still just going to be counterwatch. I actually had this, like, game that you'll probably watch in the background, that this brother, all he was doing the entire game was counterpicking me. Eventually, and everybody was watching this on stream as well. Eventually, I just stuck into playing Doomfist against his Orisa, and I won the game. And it was just so sad because he didn't even want to play the game from the POV that he wanted to get better. All he cared about was winning. So he's not learning the game. All he just wants to know is, okay, what tank do I play against this other tank that I can just walk up to him and just try to win? This is what makes the role incredibly frustrating to play. Is the game for the tank role, not DPS or support, for the tank role has become more and more about just counter picking the other person and having so much advantage in the mid fight because of your kit countering theirs, or significantly bringing more pressure compared to theirs, that the tank role just begins to feel miserable, and the person that's getting countered has to play uh pretty much picture perfectly so that they don't instantly get blown up, right? And that's something that's very frustrating for the tank role. Now, there's another problem that we run into, which is basically queue times. We're going to talk about queue times now, and then the last point I'll talk about is the hero design, and then we're going to end the video. So queue times are a bit of a problem as well, because people were saying in 6v6 that nobody was playing tank. In 6v6, I do kind of want to add on that the reason a lot of people weren't playing tank in 6v6 was in 6v6 tank was boring. The play style that Blizzard was trying to push for was this, really, for a lack of better words, a brain dead play style where they just wanted you to, like, let's say, especially near the end of Overwatch 1's lifespan, they just wanted you to lock in that Orisa and Sigma and just sit in place and just shoot. Like, this isn't fun, this isn't engaging. If we look at some of the more popular tanks today, and even the popular tanks back in the day, when, people like Miro, everybody remembers Miro, right? Like, he literally defined the way Winston was supposed to be played, and then we had the forefathers like Fissure and things like that. So, back in the day, like, the fan favorite characters were characters like Winston, Diva, like people liked playing these mobile heroes. Reinhardt, Rein Zarya comps were really popular. And then Blizzard, rather than feeding into that and designing heroes around it, they tried to, introduce more of these like different playstyles around Oris and Sig, where it was more about poke and less about brawl and dive. And, this is probably a hot take. I don't know if it is a hot take or not, but I will say that I think poke is probably one of the least fun metas that this game can ever have, because it just discourages the uniqueness of Overwatch. Where Overwatch is a game about mobility, running into the enemy and doing things, and poke just kind of tells you to sit around and AFK. Now, of course, you can still feel some form of fun of this in the support and the damage role, because there's characters that pop off with this. But in the tank role, when you're forced to play like the poke playstyle, unless every now and then on a map, it feels really boring. And I do feel that in Overwatch 1, this is the case of what was going on, at least from what I saw in the time on the Reddits and the forums and everything, where people were just complaining the tank was just boring. Like, if you didn't lock in Orisa Sig, or, any variation of double shield, well, I mean, it was mostly Orisa Sig. If you didn't lock in Orisa Sig, you were essentially throwing. Even ranked, even though people couldn't play it to perfection, like, they understood the power behind that composition. So they were locking in Orisa and Sig, but let's be realistic, like, Orisa and Sigma in that gameplay style were just so boring. There was no unique playmaking. It was literally just, okay, stay alive, put a shield up, use your cooldown, and just keep shooting and you will win eventually. So this is what did affect the queue time. Now, another thing I'm going to talk about is Overwatch is now free to play, and it's definitely, I would argue, doubled its player base compared to before. And I'm sure a lot of, I've been seeing in my comment section, especially people like, I never got a chance to play 6v6, so I would love to see what you people going through your weird nostalgia phases, or these suggestions that you guys keep saying that, oh, 6v6 might save the game. I definitely want to try 6v6 to see how it would feel. And, like, these people, they've not experienced what it would feel like as a Reinhardt to get the Zarya bubble and do some shenanigans. They didn't experience that beautiful coordinated, Winston Diva dive, or even, let's say, the one time that I did enjoy playing Orisa, or Roadhog, was the Orisa, oink and yoink comp, as I like to call it. The Orisa would throw her pull in people, Hog would throw a hook, pull somebody in, get a pick, and then that was the fun part of tank, right? Like, when you could do that, that was really fun. And that is something that I feel like we should definitely give a chance to. That I don't think queue times for tank would be that bad if we did go back to 6v6, because again, like, not only do we have double the player base, but people would be a lot more open-minded to playing it, because now as a tank, like, Probably a lot of tank players out there that do feel somewhat insecure that, man, I have all this pressure on me to do everything, and my DPS, they have partners, my supports, they have partners, I don't have a partner. Now, in some cases, that can be a good thing. If your hero pool is massive, you can do and play everything. You're gonna have a great time, right? But if you need that extra person to help you out, because in a lot of these situations, you will feel that on tank that, damn, I kind of wish I had a little bit more help over here. Then for sure, you would wish that you had a partner within that role. Well, the final, thing that I kind of want to talk about is the hero design philosophy, and we're kind of seeing a pattern in Overwatch 2, and a lot of people said that, Overwatch 2 would actually offer hero design to be a lot more free from the POV, that, they have more freedom in the way that they could design the heroes, but honestly, it kind of feels like that they're struggling to find that freedom, and they have to stay within this weird bubble in the way that they're designing tanks. For example, pretty much all the new tanks that we have gotten have been ground-based tanks. If you look at Jungle Queen, Ramatra, and Mauga, and Orissa's rework, because technically that's a completely new character, all of these tanks have been encouraged to just kind of sit in place, stay alive, hold W, and hold the shooting buttons. That, if you think about it, isn't that like not restricting their game design? Like they're all ground based tanks. All of their gameplay styles revolves around staying alive, and each of them just comes with a unique form of keeping themselves up. Like Mauga comes with a lifesteal, Joker Queen also heals herself, so I guess she has a lifesteal too. Well, okay, to be fair, she has a self heal, so I'm not gonna call it lifesteal, but Orissa's Fortify just keeps her up, and Ramatra comes with this block that can just negate 90% of damage and keeps them up. But at the end of the day, their gameplay design is very, very similar. It doesn't like when I'm playing, when I'm transitioning from in between these characters, the gameplay idea is literally the same. Like, where's my dive hero options? Where's my let's say maybe another poke tank option. Maybe we can bring back a bunker play style in 5v5 and see how it goes. But we don't have any of that. We don't have any new dive tanks. I guess you could argue that Doomfist is somewhat new, but honestly, Doom is a different topic, so I'm not going to dig into it in this video. I have a Doomfist video coming up in the future, but I will say that I do think that 5v5 has restricted the design of tank, even though we all were under the impression that, well, this would allow them to do more. And because of this as a problem, they're having to, overtune the kits of a lot of these tank heroes in order for them to thrive in this 5v5 environment, because their weaknesses are completely exposed, and to make up for those weaknesses, they have to overbuff their stats. For example, if we ever want Reinhardt to be meta or to even be remotely good in a 5v5 environment, we would have to give him a plethora of buffs to make him feel good. So to anybody that's watched my Ryan video, you would know what I'm talking about. That, I was suggesting that we should give Ryan a speed boost because the game has just seen so much mobility creep, and all this type of stuff. So, that's kind of what I wanted to discuss today, is that, 5v5 has created a lot more problems than it was trying to solve. And queue times are back to being bad anyway. So what's the excuse now? I look at the balance team, I look at the Overwatch team, and I ask them, well, mostly the Overwatch team cited that the reason they went to 5v5 was because of queue times. Okay, with all due respect, why are we having queue time problems again? If you guys are saying that queue times were a problem in 6v6, why have they become a problem in 5v5? And again, that has to do with how the game feels, number one, and that has to do with number two, the public perception of the game. Now, if a lot of streamers that are playing tank, if they're not having fun, and there's hundreds and hundreds and thousands of viewers watching them, and they're taking away that, wow, this role just doesn't look fun, nobody's going to want to log into Overwatch and want to play the tank role, right? Like, that's just the reality of it. I'm going to keep it very, very real. If people see other people being upset, they will feed into that emotion that this is probably not as fun as it looks. But when people see somebody popping off on the Widowmaker, on the Tracer, they're gonna be like, oh, I gotta log into DPS and try playing DPS, and support. Like, support is a very, very fun role right now too. Let's not lie, like, support, they have so much power in the game. So DPS and support are in a good spot, and I think they would be in a good spot anyway in 6v6 as well, because they didn't, lose any power going into 5v5. I mean, I guess you could still argue that DPS is a little bit more cosmetic again because of the way the DPS passive got nerfed and everything, and the way tanks got overbuffed. But tank is definitely a massive problem. And to be fair, while I am a DPS main, mostly a Genji main as well, while I see, some of the benefits of 5v5, I think the problems that have been created are way too much, and I think it's high time I think it's really high time that we go back to 6v6. We, let go of some of the like the passives that we brought in. We let go of some of, all these things, like all of these changes that we brought into 5v5 was a result of letting go of that one tank. And it's honestly become more of a like a balancing nightmare in Overwatch 2 than become a balancing solution. At least that's just my opinion on it. I'd love to hear your guys' opinion. The 6v6 and 5v5 topic is very interesting, and I feel like I might be talking about that for a while on my channel. So if you see a lot more like 6v6 and 5v5 videos, just it's a very interesting topic, and there's so many layers to it. So I love to keep discussing with you guys. Let me know what you think in the comment sections down below, and I will see you guys in the next video. And please do subscribe; it helps with the channel. Help a brother out if you don't mind. All right, see you in the next one.